Hello and welcome to Graceful Connections. I'm Sophie Bidard, your host for this special event, our first one of the year, inviting you to stop chasing results and embrace the process of excellence and self-improvement. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to join us today, bringing your unique energy that pours into our circle of connection. Your presence here honors the calling within you to transform your results in health, relationships, and business through a genuine paradigm shift. Today, our guest, Jean Ang, will share insights that can catalyze this shift, enhanced by Arcturian frequency transmissions. So prepare for a powerful experience today. Let's begin. Take a moment to let go of anything that doesn't serve this present moment. With each breath, feel yourself arriving more fully here. As we set our intention, may all that flows within our sacred space, be it words, vibrations, energies, serve the highest evolution of our souls and extend outward in service to all. I invite you to open your heart and your mind to receive all the brilliance that awaits. Activating your connection to the new Earth crystalline grid and to the galactic center, the center of truth. You are perfectly held, both grounded and lifted. You are safe. You can relax. You're ready and open to receive. Now I'm calling the orb of grace from the heart of the universe and placing the orb of grace around our gathering, each and every one of us, that we be held in this orb of grace and infused with grace all along our time together. As grace permeates our field, it harmonizes and magnifies all that seeks alignment and illuminates all that longs for expression in accordance with divine will and the order of grace. And breathe. Beautiful. Now within the orb of grace, I'm delighted to welcome Jean Ang. Jean is a facilitator of multidimensional healing, especially well known for his close collaboration with the Arcturians and profound transmissions of Arcturian frequencies for healing and spiritual evolution, which we're going to be experiencing today, and that is such a treat. Today, Jean is inviting us to stop chasing results and embrace the process of excellence and self-improvement. What a blessing to have you with us today, Jean. Welcome.
Hi, Sophie. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and really grateful. Thanks so much.
Yeah, we're very grateful to have you. And everyone, we're going also to experience an Arcturian process-oriented achievement transmission in order to anchor these concepts and approaches that will have been shared deeper into our subconscious mind for rapid manifestation and materialization. And Jean will also offer live transmissions of Arcturian healing method frequencies. So to you will ask Jean your question or on an issue or a healing intention, and he will offer a transmission for you and for the group. So to request your mini healing or intention support, press *2 on the phone or click raise hand on the web to come on the line with Jean, or place a request in the Q&A box on the web. But for now, let's dive into our fascinating topic. And I'd like to begin with asking you, Jean, what is the difference between a process-oriented approach and a results-oriented approach?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to start with, and I think it's a topic for today's session that I was inspired by. Particularly, in the new year, we usually are reevaluating sort of where we've come, particularly in the last year, and setting new goals and new avenues. And usually, there's new energies coming through. Also, if you follow the lunar new year, that's somewhat falling in February, and so that's also another time for this large portion of the planet, particularly people who are celebrating that kind of schedule, which is usually in the billions. There's this focus on the new kind of aspects, and the process actually is a term. There was a football coach. His name is Nick Saban. He coached for a number of schools in American football. But particularly at Alabama, he won somewhat like 4 to 7 national championships, which is very difficult. And he worked with a psychologist before he actually did that to come up with this process for teams, where they focus particularly on the next 15 seconds. I mean, there's much more to it, but it's fairly straightforward. But the idea was that regardless of what the result was, and sports still is a great microcosm, as well as other things like music or whatever your work happens to be, like a hobby, for exploring greater aspects of life. But anyways, within this context, you don't focus on what the scoreboard is. You don't focus on what just happened in the last play. You just focus on the next 15 seconds. And I think that's something that we can do. I don't think many people here, including myself, are playing football right now or are even interested in that, whether it's American or European football. There might be some. But we do have certain goals that we have in mind. And the things that detract us from that is we're not really right here in the present. We're usually looking at, maybe how far it is to achieve that goal. Maybe someone's trying to write a book, or maybe they're trying to earn their next, $10,000. And so they're looking at maybe even a debit, maybe they're $10,000 in or euros in debt. So you're that's like looking at the scoreboard. When the only thing you really have, in this idea called the process, is actually the moment, and a little bit more than that. So that's that 15-second idea. So that's the essence of it. There's more to it to unpack and more ideas, but the essence is really just to focus on the next 15 seconds and making the things that you can control, so your actions at an excellent level, the focus of what you're going to do.
Yeah, that makes total sense. When considered in that perspective of bringing ourselves to the present moment. Yeah. So you just mentioned the things that we can control, right? And focusing on these things that we can control. How do we identify them and focus on these controllables?
Yeah, and the phrase that they sort of use again, I enjoy sports and doing sports and certain observing sports, but I think, the term, you can use it in any endeavor, is, control the controllables. And just drawing from, the sporting kind of idea and then moving out to other activities, usually within that you can control your practice, which is usually your behaviors. So it doesn't necessarily have to be practice in a sport, but let's say in music. So you can control your practice. you can control your nutrition, meaning what you're eating. You can control your recovery, and then you can control your mindset. So let's say we did, and under recovery, you could say you can control your sleep, so your rest. So I'll try to make that more general, but what's really incisive, I think, is what you can't control, which I think burns a lot of our energy. So within the sporting arena, if we take just one or two things, you can't control what your opponent's going to do. Let's say if it's a one-to-one or a team. You also can't control what the score is going to be, or let's say what the judges are going to judge you on. So, but this is exactly what most people are thinking about. They're back to the monetary example. They're always thinking about, like, if your goal is to earn a certain amount this year, you're always thinking about maybe where you are. Again, it could be at a debit, it could be less than that, and you don't really have control of that. Even if you perceive you can, and that's the problem. So let's say you're in the business of selling something. I'm just making these very general and sort of also outside of the sporting arena. So you think you can control how much people are going to buy your product. You believe in your product. Maybe it's a physical product, but you actually don't have control over that. All you do is you have control of your actions, like if you are designing the product, making it, as accurate as possible, maybe putting it on the store shelf or putting it up on your website. But at that point, you can't really control whether a person's going to click or buy your product. But that seems to be where our energy goes. It's the same thing as the scoreboard. You think you can control that score, but actually you can't. What you can control is doing, whatever the particular activity, again, within that 15-second time window. And sports just tends to increase the likelihood that you're going to either succeed or fail if you don't stay within those parameters. I think that's why a lot of people enjoy that as a microcosm, whether you're doing the sport or watching the sport. And the stakes are low in the sense that it's not life or death. So some people are in life or death situations. I'm thinking of people probably in the military, where if they don't act and stay in the moment, which they're probably trained to do if they're trained, I guess, well, and they're always thinking about the end result, that can be a life or death situation. So I think whether it's sports or business or music or whatever your hobby happens to be, if you're doing it at a very kind of focused, intense level, even though we're perceiving the stakes being high, meaning maybe that's not my paycheck will be lower, or I'm going to lose this game. It could be even a friendly, weekend game of a club championship. Our amygdala, which is a part of the brain kind of perceiving fear, still sees it as, high or low stakes, but in reality, it's fairly low stakes. So it's a great learning environment. So I think, this idea of controlling the controllables, we can unpack that a little bit more. But what I was trying to point out is where are we usually, when we're not focusing on controllables, sending our energy, and that's usually towards some kind of result. The other example would be like if you're in a type of activity where you're judged by someone else as part of the score, so that could be judges, could be an audience. So you have no control over how the audience is going to react to your poem, to your energy healing, if it's a client, or to your performance, or how the judges are going to, judge you. But when you think about it, when people are very stressed in those situations, let's say you're a healer, and you're sort of either new to the experience or you kind of slip back into this results-oriented, you're concerned about if your client's going to be happy with the healing, is the judge is going to be happy with your performance, and probably 90, even up to 99% of your energy is being focused on that, then I would say you're in an imbalanced situation, because when you really have some calm time and you think about it, you actually have no control over how people are going to react to your actions.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So would you recommend that when we have a project or something that we're involved with, that we actually make a list of our controllables, that we take the time to identify them. For me, for example, I know if I make a list, then these things will be on top of my awareness much more than if I just leave it to chance to remember or to have the right inspiration at the right moment. So would that be a good practice?
I think that's a great way to do that, and it's great to write that down so that you're materializing, what you want to focus on. What we tend to write down, whether it's by computer, and there's something about writing, handwriting, that also engages some of your motor cortex in your physical body. But however that might be, I think that's a great idea to actually see what do you actually have control over. In the healing context, a lot of people here are maybe doing healings, whether professionally or for others. In the end, you really don't have control, particularly if it's energy, but even physical type healing. You don't have where you might be like doing surgery or body work. You don't really have control over how the results are going to be, but you can focus on the technique you learned. You can focus on preparing your mind to be in a positive mindset. You can prepare by, or you have control over invoking through your intention, like you did in the beginning of this session, for example, which I love, the Orb of Grace invocation. And you can do that, but we really don't have control over, let's say, in that case, how people will respond to, what we talk about or the energy healings we do here. So that's the same thing as in sports, where you're focusing on the practice or the action. That's really all you have. That's one of the main factors you have control over. So back to your question, writing that down very much helps us to see exactly what we do have control over and what we don't. And the key point there is you're decreasing, this energy burn. If people study just this kind of basic idea of in physics of a machine, the efficiency of the machine is how much of it is not going into heat. Rather it's going into, let's say, moving the piston. So what would be these heat kind of loss of energies? It's all these factors like being concerned about the results that we don't have control over. That's like burning our energy that doesn't actually go anywhere to work in that example.
Yeah, I would call it an energy leak. That's what I was thinking of, but that is the same concept. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So identifying and writing down our controllables, the elements we can control, and focusing on these so that's a good habit to develop and to acquire. Are there other habits that are important, and why in general? Why are habits more important than goals?
Yeah, I think I might have referenced this book like in the past. It's become a very popular book worldwide, but it's an American author. His name's James Clear, and he wrote a book called Atomic Habits, that even a number of years ago, that's still quite on the bestseller list. And I think it brought to the fore this idea that habits are actually more powerful than sort of any one single goal. And underlying that habit, actually, and other, authors in this sort of either self-improvement, peak performance, sort of working towards, a higher level of performance or identity, is that your identity actually is more important than any one particular goal or action. So the example I've used, or they usually use, let's say you're trying to write a book. So if you're trying to write a book, you might set a goal, of a certain number of pages or words, which is great. But what's even more powerful is if you've identified yourself as a writer, and some people don't identify themselves as a writer, and therefore trying to write, let's say, even 200 words a day may be difficult because they're focused on that particular action. But when you identify yourself as a writer, then that's sort of just what you do. So and that's why habits are so important, because let's say you just write 3 sentences or 1 sentence a day, but you identify yourself as a writer. So when you do that activity, it continues to reinforce the identity of who you think you are. And so it's just natural for you to continue to write. Whereas if you don't identify yourself as a writer, then you always have to use what most psychologists feel is a limited energy source, which is your willpower. So you have to then use your willpower to, let's say, get those 200 or 2,000 words done per a day. You don't have this sort of automatic self-concept that you just write every day because you're a writer. We wanted to apply this to like being a healer. If a lot of people here just were naturally drawn to probably healing, much like myself, so you maybe just identify very easily. This might have been created in another lifetime if we use the multidimensional aspect, that, your intention was to be a healer. So doing healings every day just came naturally to you. But just let's say, for example, this might be someone in the audience, but let's just say, for example, you did not identify yourself as a healer. Then you'd have to be like, okay, today I'm going to do, clean my chakras for 10 minutes and then energize my chakras for 10 minutes. And it seems like almost like a chore. It's not something naturally you identify with. So it can still get done, but the more powerful aspect is to identify yourself in a certain way and then create a certain activity, like a habit that you do. And we can talk more, unpack this next idea, and make it very small. Like I said, the one sentence a day idea. Because there's a lot of kind of so-called pitfalls or blockages when we start to, it boils down to a type of perfectionism that I think we all innately have, is we start to like chunk too big a idea of what we have to do. But to reinforce that self-identity, it really only takes a very small action but done consistently to reinforce, for example, this idea of being a healer. So maybe you do 5 minutes of healing every day, but that continues to reinforce, and then it becomes a habit. And of course, you could do more, but then it reinforces this identity as a healer, and then it's very easy, to do healing.
Yeah. Okay. So identity brings habits, and habits puts the process into place and brings us into the dynamic of the process. Habits as small chunks of habits. Now, one thing that we might need to do when at the level of identity, we might have to do some clearing work to be congruent with this identity, right? Some of us carry the I'm a fraud, or I'm right. So we need to be, yes, congruent, and to reconcile ourselves with the identity that we choose, or that we have by nature, and that we choose to embrace consciously, right? So if required, we need to take that step. We cannot let just the identity be sabotaged by shadow aspects that may bring it down, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. And the term that you reminded me of that usually is used is this they call it imposter syndrome, and I think it's a archetype. So I think we're all affected by it. Maybe some people very little, meaning it doesn't even reach their consciousness. But so we'll unpack that a little, because I think, like you said, that could be one major block. But just to kind of lay the groundwork back again. So let's say it's the new year and you have some goals in mind. Maybe it is to save a certain amount of money this year. So you're rather, that can be the goal, but it's sort of like there's a larger step there that I'm suggesting is you take your goals and you ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be from this goal? So let's say the saving of however many, let's say $10,000 this year or 10,000 euros. So your identity is that you're a type of person who's maybe thrifty, or maybe you're a type of person that's abundant. So you're first trying to take your goals and identify what's the kind of person you want to become. That's that self-identity piece. So we can kind of unpack that more, but I wanted to kind of set up how do you actually identify what's the, identity you're trying to create, because that's a more powerful focus, or actually almost like a machine. It's a more powerful machine than just focusing on the end goals. And then just to kind of come back to what I was saying, so let's say you even save 5 cents a day. That kind of reinforces the fact that you're a thrifty person, or that you're an abundant person, because you're putting away some money. It could be very small. I'm just kind of using almost like a hyperbole, but it could be that small. But of course, you could save more than that. And so it keeps just that small activity once a day will just continue to reinforce the idea that you're a thrifty person, that you're, let's say, abundant person because you have savings. And so that's a very powerful way to set up things, and also very easy to continue in that direction. Whereas if you think, I've got to save $300 a week, and then you look at, that sometimes you hit that, sometimes you don't, and sometimes it's probably a little unreasonable, then you might just give up on the whole thing. That's the whole problem. But like back to this idea of some of these blockages, the imposter syndrome, I think that we all kind of face that, some people more than others. But maybe we can unpack that in a bit.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. I think, it's because we're taking some time to get used to this identity. And, if you listen to a lot of, or read a lot of biographies of people who've reached, very high level in their particular endeavor, whether it's Olympians or actors, actresses, for example, even after they've won something like an Academy Award or a gold medal, or they even will still say that they feel like someone's going to find them out, so to speak, and realize that they've just been kind of like, why are they there? And so, I've seen this trend, and of course you can see it in yourself, or I see it in myself, and I realized, even after all that people have achieved at such a high level, they're still having that kind of feeling that someone's going to find them out, like they're not supposed to be there. I think it's an archetype that we have to just identify, observe in ourselves, and really let it be, let it be okay that you have that, and just continue again to focus. That's why I think the process is such a powerful idea, and you can see the results from a lot of people who've used it, that you just focus on what's at hand, the activities and actions that you can control, because these ideas of like the blockages idea of like the imposter syndrome, they're going to be present, but even if you focused on them, they're not going to take you anywhere. They're, again, like the heat in the machine. They're just going to burn your energy.
Right. Yeah. So, I guess we need to ask ourselves, what do I need to experience, or what do I need to choose? Or so there's something maybe we need to ask ourselves, so that I believe this, or so that I embody this archetype, or I am the writer, and I believe and I know I am the writer, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why the self-identity and the habits and the actions and the fact of repetition really helps, because in some ways we're convincing ourselves, the people who finally, I think, get over the imposter syndrome, and it can take a while, just like I said, like even with a lot of feedback, even if you get to the very top of your game, some people are still, or endeavor, still feeling the imposter syndrome, is that by repeated actions, you start to see the end result, but it's by focusing on the action. So if you're writing every day and then you realize after 300 days you've just been focusing on writing, let's say, one sentence a day, and some days you write more, of course, and then you see your stack of papers, you've written your book and maybe you haven't even published it yet, that it's 300 pages of written material, you know, that repetition and that materialization then, you know, overcomes this idea that you're not a writer. So
Right.
I think it's
Yeah.
through a lot of the repetition and then seeing that result from the repetition that we overcome some of these major blockages that I think that are okay to have because everyone has them. You know, this idea like that one, we've identified one big one, which is the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Okay. So all of this that you're talking about and this notion of the very small steps, right, and the small chunks of habits makes me think of the micro improvements. That's something that I studied at the time in the previous life when I was in corporate business and at business school, Kaizen, right? The concept of micro and ongoing improvement. So can you talk about Kaizen? Does it relate? How does it relate? And what does it bring to us in this context?
Oh yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. And I think that was also something I used in my former life in academia. Yes, this idea of micro improvements. I love that term. It kind of embodies this actually Japanese word kaizen that back after the World War II, actually the United States sent a lot of engineers to help Japan rebuild, particularly after the nuclear bombing. Various factories and businesses. And there was a particular engineer, his name was Edward Deming, who came up with this idea of micro improvements, and he labeled the term Kaizen. So it's actually small, comfortable improvements. And this idea like saving 5 cents a day, that's exactly a Kaizen idea. Meaning it's so small you might even feel it's ridiculously small in terms of the improvement. But the idea is that you want to make it so small that it feels comfortable and actually easy to do, and then you do it consistently. And that's always going to move you forward. And of course you could do more, and you know it actually works with your nervous system. Because if you take on too big a chunk, which is this idea, I kind of labeled it perfectionism. Let's say rather than saving 5 cents a day, your goal is like, I'm going to save like back to 300, or, you know, it just depends on what you think is, so, you know, a large sum. And then all of a sudden what that activates in your nervous system is your amygdala, which is your fear processing, because then you start to worry, where am I going to get, you know, enough funds, whether it's $30, $300, or $3,000 or $300,000, whatever you've kind of set as your, you know, goal. That then you start to worry, and that actually can shut you down. That usually shuts us down either partially or completely. So if it shuts you down completely, that's the problem. Then you don't even start to save. You're like, let's just forget about it, you know, because I'm not going to be able to save, let's say, $300 a week. You know, I'm just trying to, you know, get by on my paycheck. Let's say that's the idea. But so you kind of abandon ship. So, and that's why it's like a non-starter. That's the biggest problem, but that's happening a lot. So if you can make it very small, like, okay, I'm just going to save 5 cents a day, and you start there, then you're always moving. You know, eventually that will become comfortable, and then you move to, you know, 50 cents a day. And you can see this idea. You'll start to move, but you always want to move to the next increment when that current increment is very easy for your nervous system. If you take one other example, just to give, if this is new for people, like if you use Kaizen with working out, for example, or exercising. Let's say a person hasn't been exercising for 5, 10, 20 years. So then they're like, okay, New Year's resolution, I'm going to go 3 times a week to the gym. Well, going to the gym's not that easy. You know, you have to block out the time. If you have kids or you have a partner, you have to coordinate your schedule. And then, of course, you know, what time of the day is going to matter because you're not always at the same energy level. You got to get in your car. You probably may have to drive, you know, 5 to an hour. You know, it could be that long just to get to the gym. Let's say it's 15 minutes. So just to get to the gym is, a complex thing of maybe 20 things that you've got to do. And you don't recognize how hard that is in the beginning. So like Kaizen or even in the Atomic Habits, the idea is I'm just going to put my gym shoes out, in the front of the door. That's how small it can be. You just get started, you're like, okay, I could do that. I could just put my gym shoes out there. And maybe for the first week or 3 weeks, that's all you do. I know it sounds ridiculous, but this is how people have started, who become ultra marathoners, who run 100-mile races. They can even start that small. And then, James Clear had a great interview with Andrew Huberman, if people know that podcast, where he said he had a friend who all he did with this workout idea, it may give you some ideas of that sort of an endeavor you're trying to get started, is he would just get to the gym and spend 5 minutes there and then leave. So he would just maybe do half a set or something, or, like walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes and then go home. That was kind of the thing. So he did that for a couple of weeks, and, he got into the gym habit just by starting very small like that. So that's one of the ideas with Kaizen, which I think can be very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can sense how, yes, there's a point at which it is easy and it is natural, and actually we feel inspired to expand, right? To raise the bar. Once you have the habit of going for 5 minutes, then at some point, soon enough, I guess, it becomes ridiculous to drive all this, or to make have all this organization to go to the gym for 5 minutes, and soon enough it becomes, well, I might as well do 10 minutes. I can do 10 minutes, and then we can grow from there. So it's about getting started with a feasible, putting in place a habit, like starting where we are, I guess, right? Starting wherever we are, and from there building a habit that then turns into a machine. That's really what you mentioned earlier. So I love this. It sounds and it feels very realistic, I would say. Realistic, feasible, possible, but at the same time, it builds energy. And I love how you relate to how it affects our nervous system, our energy, and so on. Now, in the globality, how do we harness the process rather than the results to achieve what we want in life? What's the recipe here? How do we do that?
Yeah. I think, the other point that James Clear pointed out that I think is true in my own experience that people might find is true is one of the main points in creating the habit, the crux point, is what you just identified, is right in the beginning. It's actually the first 5 seconds to 5 minutes of an activity that you're trying to create the habit for that is where people win or lose the day. So, because it's that initial, like, okay, like I'm, gonna start writing, and right before you start, you think, oh, it's too much energy to start, open up my computer. So then it's a non-starter and you don't do it. Maybe there's a lot of, you start looking at scrolling Instagram or something much easier. The bar is quite low on those activities that probably aren't really necessarily moving us towards what we wanted to identify as a new endeavor. So if identifying that that's actually the crux point is very helpful, that it's actually those first couple seconds or at most the first couple minutes of the activity that are going to be the most difficult. So if you can lower the bar, that's what the Kaizen does. If you can lower the bar on that first that first beginning, then you can get started. And like you said, then, you're there at the gym, might as well spend, let's say, 10 more minutes rather than 5 minutes. And the other point with the nervous system is, is this, they call it reward circuitry. And a lot of people are probably more, because it's very popular now, this idea of the dopamine neurotransmitter, this feel-good neurotransmitter It's also involved with addictions, but it's also involved with this reward pathway. It could be a reward of doing things or accomplishing things. So anytime you actually accomplish something, even something very small, so it doesn't matter if it was saving 5 cents or, just putting your shoes out, in front of the door. If that's something you've identified as a goal, when you do it, you'll get a dopamine hit in your brain. It could be small, but it will be there. And that's what actually, speaking of, social media, where they spend billions of dollars to figure out how, through the neuroscience research, how to get people to spend more time on their platform. They realize that it's, part of this is the dopamine pathway, reward pathway, and they make things very small and easy to do, amongst other things. The easier it is to do something on the, let's say, social media platform, the more likely you're going to stay on there and do it. So that's why the swiping is very easy. And then like the uploading of things, the faster you can upload, entire albums onto your Instagram rather than one picture at each time. We might not think about it, but that actually makes everything easier for your nervous system. So the dopamine hit, we can harness this idea, or we are by some of the discussion, just so people understand a little bit of neuroscience of why just these small incremental changes, even at a ridiculous idea to our, let's say, conscious mind, really harnesses a very innate part of our nervous system, which is this reward. Anytime we can check something off, we have a little bit of a dopamine spike.
Okay.
Meaning it's more likely that we're going to do that activity again.
Yeah, we can kind of trick ourselves with knowing how this works. We can trick ourselves into creating the habits that are going to lead us to those goals that we want to forget about and focus on our habits and focus on the process, focus on the experience. Now, I think this is all, it all makes a lot of sense, and it is a very attractive approach, but it seems to me that we're going to need help and support to actually make it happen for ourselves. And luckily we have you, Jean, to help us with that, not only to present the concept, but to help us adopt this way of operating, right, to anchor it and embody it. So we're going to have in a moment, you're going to offer an energy transmission, channeling an Arcturian process-oriented achievement transmission that's going to anchor these ideas deep within our subconscious for rapid manifestation that's going to kick us into beginning. I'm sensing into beginning with this approach. But before we get to experience this, I'd love for you to share the wonderful offering that you've prepared for our community to support us with implementing this approach. It is the Archangel Michael's The Process transmissions, and we'd love to hear all about it. So for everyone to follow, you can go to gracefulconnections.com. That's graceful with 2 L's, as in full of grace, gracefulconnections.com/Gene01, Gene01, so that's GENE and digits 01 as in January. Okay, gracefulconnections.com/Gene01. If you're on the webcast, you have a button and a link. If you're on the replay, just scroll down the page and discover Gene's special offer. Gene, please reveal what you've created for our audience.
Yeah, so this is, like you mentioned, a more multi-dimensional program. We've been talking a little bit about the nuts and bolts more at the maybe mental or intellectual level, which is very helpful. You could just use those ideas to get started, or even to do your entire reintegration of, this self-identity and achieving sort of what you want in life, and kind of building kind of a certain consciousness, and also what I call your subtle body structure. But, back to the title. So why Archangel Michael to begin with? It didn't come down as a direct Arcturian transmission. It could have. But I think Archangel Michael, some of the qualities maybe that I've identified or kind of resonate with, depends on, maybe how you learned about this particular being in your relationship. But Archangel Michael tends to have this focus on the divine will, and will meaning carrying things out. We all have a type of spiritual mission of who we are, much like a plant. That's a flower. When it grows from a seed, will manifest as like I mentioned, a flower. But it goes through a process. It takes a type of maybe innate will for the seed to form into the flower. So Archangel Michael kind of has that resonance, that quality of the divine will, as well as other aspects like the divine intelligence. But this is a particular assistance spiritually that we're focused on in these transmissions. So that's why it's an archangelic, Michaelic process. And then each of these days of the offering will be focusing, kind of taking a deeper dive, both energetically as well as intellectually, or kind of just a nuts and bolts kind of approach to learning those techniques we can integrate directly into our lives right away. But the first day is focused on this idea of the process, working at the here and now on that first, the next 15 seconds of whatever you're doing, making that at a very high level, not looking at, what happened before or afterwards, and really just focusing on what's going on right now, and then almost like taking small incremental steps towards your goal without sort of focusing on the overall end process, which tends to maybe divert us from those portions which actually are going to, do something or that we have control over. Then the next day is a transmission to help build those habits. We've unpacked some of those factors that help with building habits. The other factors that I wanted to mention was, how we create our environment will very much help with creating certain habits, which then reinforce the identity. And then as a byproduct, the results, usually which people start with first, come. And then also making those habits enjoyable. Sometimes you have to pair the activity, that you're trying to develop as a habit with something that you enjoy. So maybe a lot of people will listen to music as they either work out or, do running, which they don't necessarily enjoy at first, but they're pairing that with something that they do enjoy. So then it's easier to do that, start building that habit. Then finally, kind of a little bit at a bird's eye view, the third transmission is more with, handling adversity as well as success, which is kind of two sides of the same coin. So a lot of times what really stops us is later on at some point when we've gotten the habits going, we've gotten the self-identity going. We usually reach sometimes what you mentioned, both internal as well as external roadblocks. But if you've ever talked to anyone or you look at your own endeavors throughout your biography of this life, anything you probably accomplished that you feel either proud of or that you said like, yes, I accomplished that, there was probably some type of adversity that you went through. And that adversity actually could be the success of your project. So if you look at some big endeavor that you've done, or you look at biographies that people have done something, and once they've accomplished maybe that big thing, if you look in their next couple of years, a percentage of them will have problems after that big success. So there's somewhat of, again, an archetype that one needs to kind of look at, whether it's the success kind of took them off their path. Again, they started to focus more on the results rather than what got them there, which was the activity, the action, that here and now moment action. So this third transmission is sort of to go over and also download, almost bulletproof ourselves, both for adversity as well as success.
Wow. Yes, very, very important step. Handling we would think about, yeah, we need to handle adversity, but handling success as well. Definitely, that's a great consideration. So each of these 3 days, so this is on February 4th, 5th, and 6th. And each of these 3 days includes transmission and practices, meditations, energy skills. So there's teaching, there's the teaching part, and there's the transmission part on each day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, if people resonate with Archangel Michael, that's great. It's mostly our own higher self, our spiritual guides, teachers, and of course the divine that's bringing through the transmissions. So what's great about the multidimensional aspect is it can embody what we talk about, but maybe some people have already either embodied those skills and so they're at another level, and which our guides know. So they'll bring through whatever is most necessary along those topics, meeting the person where they are, both energetically and consciously.
Yeah. Well, we get the support of Archangel Michael, nothing less, right? And I'm feeling it's like, oh, we get such an empowerment. That's for sure. We get such an empowerment. And one thing that I love is when I first discovered what you're offering. I love this offer. It is so special and unique. And one thing that really made me smile is that recently I've been pondering a lot about divine will. Maybe it's something that's in the air, or maybe it's for me personally that I'm pondering divine will and wondering how do we align with divine will, how do we live by divine will, and that's something that's on my mind. And when I discovered your offer, I thought, oh well, having Michaelic will, that's gonna help, right? It's like it's gonna click us into divine will, or it's at least gonna greatly support us and empower us in that context as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a interesting dichotomy, and there's this idea of the ease and flow and grace, and that's also part of also psychology. They call it the flow state. And then on the extreme other end is sort of this kind of grit, kind of grinding it out, which tends to maybe impart ideas of sweating it. Really there's an overcoming adversity, and so you're trying to actually flow or go between these two, using both, I think, rather than an either or approach. Like either it's got to be always tough and hard, or I'm going to avoid anything that's tough and hard, and it has to be very easy and flowing. But you kind of want to be able to use both ends of the spectrum, and everything in between is sort of the idea being espoused here.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to add, or maybe have you comment upon, is that we've talked a lot about very hands-on types of activities or goals or activities, but it seems that this can very much support us and bring us to a much higher level in our spiritual development, which is not so hands-on, and yet I know that many people are struggling to put in place the habits, or to put in place a daily practice, and so that could help us. Now, in spiritual development, I guess there's not such a measurable goal as we could have with the more hands-on activities, but habits certainly are essential. Can you comment on this? How is this program going to support us with our spiritual development?
Yeah. I've kind of been focused on what we might call mundane activities, whether that's saving money or playing soccer or something of this nature, or learning to play the violin. But speaking more of sort of the spiritual activities, again, there's this idea of the non-dual spiritual ideas that we're already divine, which we are, and maybe we're expressing that, and there can be blockages to that. And then there's this idea, people have run into certain schools of spirituality, where it's very much focused on practice and doing certain, maybe it's a yoga type system where you're doing certain asanas and so forth, or tai chi or qigong, and very practice oriented. And so there's always somewhere in between. So a couple of points on that. One, I think, is whatever our even though we are divine, like they call it, like the Buddha within, everything's already perfect in the divine level. In these more duality levels, like the physical world, the energy world, even the soul world, we're still trying to bring that perfection, express it. So that's where the practice can help. And what I think when we want to develop a practice is that it puts us in a greater percentage that the divine will express itself as it is. Maybe it doesn't express itself 100%, but it can express itself in a higher level. So, like if you are, for example, a lot of the challenges that we all face are being as anger, being either slightly annoyed or even in a rage in a certain situation that tend to arise. So we'll just kind of call it, like, do something easy, not your ultra marathon, challenge, but people can annoy you through the different emails and so forth that either during the day, or texts, or just small interactions, and it's just a mild annoyance. So if you the divine would just allow that to happen, you'd be fine. You'd maybe even see compassion towards that person. But getting yourself into the higher percentage that you're going to act that way, that's what the spiritual practice does. So if you have some type of meditative practice, for example, or contemplative practice, let's say it's a meditative practice, what that meditation does, you're spending some time quiet, is you are practicing observing your consciousness. You're kind of in that witness mode, and even though there's a lot of thoughts and emotions, so you're practicing that witness mode, for, let's say, 5 up to 30 minutes or more a day. And you do that consistently, maybe not every day, but ideally maybe, every day. So now someone sends you an email and, kind of pisses you off, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I'm just talking from, I'm not talking from personal experience. I'm just kidding around. But now, if you're highly reactive, you will send an email back right away. But if you've done some meditative practice, this is just an example. You get a chance to observe that pissed offness in yourself, and you don't identify 100% with that anger that's showing up. And you can pause. You can not send an email back, maybe even for a couple days. Even until you're ready to send an email that would be constructive or even, like a blessing back to the person, not in a kind of a hierarchical way, but you just realize, oh, okay, I see what this person was actually trying to say. So that ability to pause, you put yourself in a better percentage. It's not guaranteed. You put yourself in a better percentage that you're going to be able to pause if you've done those practices for 3 years of just even meditating for 10 minutes a day because you're in that witness state. So I think that's what spiritual practice does for us, is it allows us to put ourselves in a better percentage that the divine is going to come through on a moment-to-moment basis. I know I didn't quite answer your question on how to set up a practice, which I can do next, but I think from a kind of a bird's eye view, this is why spiritual practice is helpful, even though if people also are coming from a spirituality idea that we're already perfect, as divine beings, we just need to get ourselves in a better percentage to express that, like using that example of, day-to-day annoyances.
Yeah, it's like an immune system to annoyances, right? We build an immunity. And not only to annoyances. Annoyances are the little things, but then things can take greater proportions. So, yeah. Okay. Great. I can see how this will support us in so many areas of our life. So Archangel Michael's The Process Transmissions, 3 days, very generously priced with a PayPal for payment option available in many countries. You're going to share so much more about it during these 3 days. So I'm sure that everyone may have questions or things that you want to talk about in regard to this process approach. It will be the time to discuss with you, Jean, during these 3 days. And so we will meet you then, February 4th, 5th, and 6th. Everybody stay with us all along our time together today. We'll be sharing a special announcement at the end of our gathering, one that you will not want to miss. For now, let's get a taste of the process-oriented approach before we go into the personal requests. You've offered for us all to experience a specific Arcturian process-oriented achievement transmission. Can you tell us what it's about? And when you're ready to go, we are ready and delighted to receive it. Thank you, Jean.
Yeah, like you pointed out, like with the offering, what's there is both kind of this intellectual or discursive, understanding, and those include the techniques and even the meditations. And then there's also the energetic download, kind of this connection to the divine, to our helping spirits, our guides, our teachers, in this case, Archangel Michael and the Arcturians. So we're going to now experience this more energetic download of the blueprints. And again, it could be what we discussed. Again, some people may be more advanced. They've kind of already integrated a lot of these ideas. So then what's coming down is what would meet them at their next level. Maybe some of these ideas are new. So people might be downloading, something else that would help them understand what's going on here or implement some of these ideas. And some people might be right where they, right exactly with what we discussed. So right now we're going to connect to the divine. We're going to do what would be day one, the process oriented transmission, and bring down those patterns that will help you, achieve your goals in the new year. Through this process of kind of here and now, present-oriented, sort of not focusing on the end result or the uncontrollable aspects, but the controllable aspects. I'm going to bring that down here. So it's going to be about 10 minutes, and people can just relax, just enjoy themselves as if they're receiving energy healing. And you may or may not, you may get insights as we're doing it. You may, in a sense, unpack. Or maybe it unpacks in the next couple of days or even the next couple hours. We're starting the process-oriented transmission, being facilitated by the divine, your higher self, the spiritual guides and teachers that you connect with, Archangel Michael and also the Arcturian. You can think of it as like a energetic turbo boost for your goal achievement, your intentions, your life purpose, manifestation, particularly for this new year. And in this first deepening phase, if you had specific goals in mind for this new year, you can think of those or have those be energized. Usually I'm silent during the download, but we're continuing with energizing your particular goals and intentions. Now we're continuing with the second phase. We're downloading the patterns, frequencies, and information particularly pointed out in the discussion on the process that could be beneficial for people now. And now we're entering the third phase of the download, putting everything together, particularly for our life mission, kind of what our life purpose is expressing both innately as well as consciously. Continuing the third download, putting all the bits and pieces and micro movements into the larger context of our life path and purpose. And that completes the Archangel Michael and Arcturian process-oriented transmission. You can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now, moving your fingers and your toes, coming completely back to your physical body now. And when you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
Yes, thank you. Wow, thank you, Jean. I got some tingling in my hands that tell me like, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's put this whole, it really is a new paradigm, a new way of not only of doing, but it seems to me that it becomes a whole new lifestyle, right? The way we do things, the way we approach doing things. And I love the twist that you've brought to the context of our life purpose and our life path. So yes, let's do this. Thank you, Jean. This is getting us started, and we're going to continue with you on February 4th, 5th, and 6th to really adopt and anchor this whole new lifestyle. That's the only way I can phrase it. I love it. Thank you, Jean. Now let's stay in transmission mode if you're up to it, Jean. We have some requests from the audience. We have many requests, so what I suggest to do in regard of time is we're going to group several requests into one. And to start with, we have several requests for health. So there are requests from Martin in New Jersey, Mina in Finland, Karen in Sedona, and others, and anyone and everyone who wishes to receive support, help, healing for any health issue. Jean, do you have something for health that you can offer as a transmission?
Yeah. The latest kind of large healing frequency in the Arcturian healing method is called the Arcturian galactic light healing frequency that works at the physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine level. I think that could be very helpful for people who want to balance or heal a health-related issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll get started. So we're starting channeling the Arcturian galactic light healing frequency at the physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine levels. And whatever your intention might be, it also could be non-health related if you're listening to this now or as a recording. Just set your intention that the energies will work on that. continuing to channel the Arcturian galactic light healing frequency. And that completes the energy of the session. You can gently come back to your physical body now.
Thank you. Wow, that was felt very nourishing to me, to the heart center, even though I didn't specifically direct it there, but I guess nourishing the heart will nourish our health in every aspect and our whole being. So that really makes sense. I love receiving galactic light into the nourishment into the heart and into the whole being. Thank you, Jean. Let's take another request. Well, I love this request from Linda in Maple Valley, who asks for support in connecting with the Arcturian guides. So I'm sure we're all interested in support in this area.
Yeah. There's another advanced frequency called the Arcturian silk dimensional frequency. Kind of clears our different subtle bodies, making them like a quality of silk that will help our communication with the Arcturian. So people who would like that intention, also you could have an intention to connect to your particular star family. If that also isn't necessarily what you're intending or resonating with, you could have this frequency help you connect to your particular spiritual guides, teachers, angels. And also, if you want, it could be just to your higher self and that wisdom. Okay. So we're going to be channeling what's called the Arcturian dimensional silk healing frequency. This works at the physical, etheric, emotional, mental, causal, spiritual, and divine level. We're continuing to channel the Arcturian dimensional silk healing frequency. And that completes the exposure to the Arcturian dimensional silk healing frequency. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers.
Thank you. That was very profound. And I found that it was, and I was shown like the threads of silk, how threads of silk can support our connections and materialize almost our connections with the Arcturians or whoever of our guides or our higher selves, like using these threads of silk for connection. Very beautiful. Thank you, Jean. Now let's get to our special announcement. We promised a special announcement. Let's get to this, Jean. Everyone, Jean is generously offering a fast action bonus for any purchases of the Archangel Michael's The Process transmissions by Sunday, January 18th at midnight Pacific. Jean, please tell us about your fast action bonus, the Arcturian Opening the Heart transmission.
Yeah, I think this is a great balance to, developing overall the divine will that the Archangel Michael process transmissions are. This one focuses on the heart center, and this is a 6-hour presentation that is very similar in the setup. There's energy transmission for about an hour, and then discussion around the topic, and all focused around our heart center and this area of unconditional love. So the first session is about opening up what's called the lotus petals of the heart. In this system, there's 12 lotus petals of the heart. So we go deep into that aspect. Then we also address, like we did, we discuss with the will aspect, there can be blockages or problems that we could clear on any of the 7 dimensional levels. Also, this can occur also at the heart level. So the second session works really on those blockages, and there's one particular, block that maybe really is an archetypal block, which is called the core wound. This could be our, separation from the divine into an ego or a personality structure. And then finally, the third session is working on how we orient to, assisting others. And this really identifies or kind of reinforces, maybe even in a habitual way, like we talked about, our sense of oneness. So this is labeled the, overcoming self-cherishing, but really it's focusing and thinking about, how we can serve others, and that's really a development of the heart center.
Wonderful. I love it. It's so powerful and so needed. Personally, I would buy the package just for this transmission, for the fast action bonus. It seems so powerful. And do we need support to open our hearts at the moment? I say yes, we all do. Jean, I have the impression that this opening of the heart not only balances, as you mentioned, but it may also perfectly support and actually prepare us for the Archangel Michael's the process. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, exactly. The one model for our emotional, mental development or astral development is we have these three centers that people may have studied, and we've discussed maybe in previous interviews or programs. You have your head center, and like in Chinese medicine, they call it the upper dantian, and then your heart center, or the middle dantian, and then your belly center, the hara, the lower dantian. So this is like the three aspects of our emotional, mental development, thinking, feeling, and willing. So the head, the heart, and the belly, respectively. And it's a model that can be looked at to help develop those three centers. But like what you're pointing out, they're actually all interrelated. Energetically, you might think of the central channel or the central pillar, as connecting all three. So they really don't work separately. They work in conjunction with each other. And I think, if we were only to focus on achievement-oriented kind of endeavors, which are important, but, there could be a lack of both a warmth, which would be the heart, and also even a lack of vision. Like if we just focused on activities, there wouldn't be any coordination into, which we sort of got at the very end of our Michaelic Arcturian transmission, like how do you put it all together? That's really the head center, has that bigger vision. So I think by coming from the heart, we have a sense that what does the world need, is kind of the question of the heart, or even more specifically, what does this person who's in front of me need? And then we can use our will center to sort of do those activities, because some of those could be quite long endeavors, when we think of even for a person, another person, but maybe for the world, maybe we want to leave something of a somewhat lasting nature. It may take a while to actually develop that. So the development of the will actually helps us to accomplish this goal that was actually started from the heart, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for adding this extra, it looks like a jewel, this extra jewel on the crown that you're offering with this this special offer. So this fast action bonus, Arcturian Opening the Heart transmission, expires on Sunday, January 18th at midnight Pacific. It is for your purchase of the Archangel Michael's The Process transmissions. In this package, the invitation is to 3 transmissions across 3 days to imprint Archangel Michael's wisdom into your subtle body system and consciousness. It is 90 minutes every day, live on February 4th, 5th, and 6th, plus the replays, which are just as potent. And then you can keep working with the replays until you've mastered and integrated the practices in your daily life, gaining the benefits of developing Michaelic will, empowering you to accomplish your goals, endeavors, and above all, your life mission. So go to gracefulconnections.com/Gene01, Gene GENE and digits 01. If you're on the webcast, you have the button and the link on the replay. Scroll down the page and discover Gene's special offer and join us then. Thank you. Now let's take a moment to return to the awareness of the orb of grace surrounding us, allowing it to remain there, holding us, holding all that we have discovered, received, experienced today, all that we are not even yet aware we have received, allowing it to settle in, to sink in as we are held in the orb of grace for as long as it serves our highest good, our evolution, and the highest good of all. And I close now with deep gratitude to all of you, whether you're here live or on the replay. Thank you for saying yes to the calling of grace and to embracing the process of excellence and self-improvement with Archangel Michael. Infinite gratitude to our brilliant expert, Jean Ang, for all the wisdom, illumination, frequency transmissions, and all the sacred offerings you've shared with us today. Thank you, Jean.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, yes. Gratitude to the Orb of Grace for holding us in this safe, sacred sanctuary. Gratitude for all the grace blessing us at every moment, offering nourishment, healing, and insights as we open our hearts to receive. Gratitude to our higher selves and all the higher beings who guide and protect us, and to the all-pervading divine presence. Until we meet again soon, may graceful blessings shower upon us all. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, everyone. And goodbye for now.